And we are back. Another very quick change and another very interesting conversation coming up. We will talk about the future of work culture. Work habits have changed in the past year. Some companies have gone hybrid, some companies have gone 100% remote, and some today are insisting that their employees come back to the office. And at the center of this question is how to keep the work culture. I'm very pleased to be joined by Camilla Boyer, or I had to say it with a French accent, I'm sorry. It's in my DNA. Please, can you introduce yourself and what you do for Hopin?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone, I'm Camilla Boyer. The word has been corrupted over time, I'm afraid. So it's Boyer now, not French. But so I am the head of internal comms and culture at Hopin. I've been there just coming up on a year now. It's super exciting role to be. And I sit on a team called the Vibe team, which is something that's a little bit unique to Hopin that I can definitely tell you more about later.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. The Vibe team, I'm sure it's pretty linked to the work culture. But before we talk about the culture at Hopin, a couple of things to make clear is that Hopin is a company that is 100% remote.
Yep, that's
correct. Right. And actually, I'm asking this to every guest today. How much was the success of Hopin tied to the lockdown?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And to answer it, I'll just run you back very briefly through Hopin history. Yeah. So we were founded over the summer of 2019 by our CEO, Johnny, who created Hopin because he actually fell ill with sort of a mystery illness, a set of allergies that meant that he couldn't leave the house for about 2 years. And at the time, he was a freelance developer. And so he relied on going to conferences in order to find work. And suddenly he couldn't do that anymore. And he'd also grown up very globally and so had family all over the place and really understood through those two experiences why being required to be physically present somewhere is so limiting. And so he had this idea to create this platform that would allow you to build these great engaging events. Hopefully you're finding today very engaging on Hopin. Yeah. That allows you to participate in that way no matter where in the world you are. So that was summer of 2019. They launched the product in fall of 2019. Obviously, at that time, nobody had a crystal ball. We didn't see the pandemic coming. But I will say that very quickly, when millions of us across the world realized that same pain of being stuck in our houses through lockdown, suddenly we resonated with the solution of needing to have an online equivalent of events, right? So I would say the lockdown and the pandemic probably catalyzed Hopin's success in some ways, but we were already facing incredible inbound demand before the pandemic even started, and we continue to see it now.
So I don't want to say great timing, but a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't predict these things, but I think, I wouldn't wish a pandemic on anyone. I hope we don't go through it again, but certainly was helpful to us in some degree.
But it's really interesting to learn that it wasn't an opportunistic, creation of a company. It was solving a pain that was very real before the pandemic, and then after that, everybody could identify with. So now that we are, this event today is hybrid, so most of it is happening on Hopin, but we also have talks in the building. We have live speakers with audiences. What do you see now in terms of event habits that the situation is maybe normalizing a little bit? Yeah. Are people going back offline? Is it hybrid model? What trends do you see?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic really opened people's eyes to a wider range of options, right? And I think something that we can all accept as true, even before the pandemic, is that we are an increasingly mobile global workforce, right? And just as people, as a society as well, people are moving around a lot more. But also we don't always want to have to travel for different things and things like that. So I think in a post-pandemic world, where during the pandemic we were forced to do everything online, in a post-pandemic world, people are kind of realizing, oh, actually, I kind of liked the luxury of being able to join some of these things from my house. Maybe they have a relative that they have to take care of. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they just don't have the resources to travel that far. So from the attendee point of view, it's actually really nice to have the option to kind of attend those events online. Yeah. And then from the organizer point of view, I mean, I think you find this with virtual events and hybrid events both, that that physical component is really important. I'll be the first to say I love meeting people in real life for sure. I think there's no perfect replacement for that. But if I'm an event organizer, I see that by having that virtual component, I can massively increase my reach and participation and get all these global perspectives at much lower overhead than having to physically accommodate all of them, right? So It's a really great way of expanding the impact of your event by adding the virtual component for sure.
So both users and companies are seeing, I think, value into having a virtual component to what they do.
Right. And I think just basically it's the world has changed. The pandemic changed the world in a way that irrevocably, we're not going back.
So one thing that might change is the way that we view company culture. And this is the main topic of this talk. So Hopin is 100% remote. And so I have a lot of questions to ask you about that. There are a lot of companies in Zurich who are saying, no, now people need to come back to the office. This is how we keep the culture. People need to meet face to face and interact and make friendships and whatever. So now coming from a company that's 100% remote, tell us, what is the culture at Hopin? How is it possible to establish a work culture?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I hope this isn't too controversial to say, but I would say that companies that believe that company culture is founded in a physical presence don't really understand what company culture is. If you think your culture is so fragile that just mandating everyone to come to the office is the only way to sustain it, then come talk to me, because we got to change that perception, right? So your question about what is Hopin culture? So Hopin culture is really founded in our values. It's really founded in the events that we share and the moments that we create for people to connect. We do that online. We do some, smaller physical meetups as well. But we really, and I mentioned at the beginning, I sit on this team called the Vibe team, which is a team that Hopin built. Basically, we're the culture team. Basically, we were built so that we can work specifically on creating that culture. Because the one thing I will say is when you're in a remote environment, you have to be a bit more intentional about your culture than you are in a physical environment. And I can expand on whichever part of that is interesting.
All of it. But I like that, you advocate a way to look at culture that is not an insecure culture. Okay, so that you believe that it can survive in 100% remote. But you do say that, there is an investment to be made for this culture to exist. And I am sure, maybe very big corporations have a team that look after the culture, but up until now, let's say medium-sized corporations maybe didn't necessarily need a team to entertain the culture, whereas in a 100% remote environment, you have to.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that you have to. The common shorthand for what culture is what happens when nobody's looking. So you're going to have a culture no matter what. It's just how much attention are you paying to that culture, and how much are you actually trying to craft it and care about it. And maybe I'm biased, but I basically believe that success starts internally. So the more attention that you pay to creating a great culture, the better chance you have of your whole company being successful.
Okay. So tell us, as the Vibe team, what do you organize? Like, what do you do so that you intentionally create that Hopin culture?
Yeah, for sure. So there are a few main branches that I'll touch on. So the first is internal communications. To just backtrack for a second, I basically think company culture is a combination of what you see. So that might be items of swag, or, if you have an office, how you decorated it, like that sort of thing. What you say, so that's your values and how you speak to each other and how you communicate, and what you do. And that's, where your actions really speak louder than words. Mm-hmm. And so for my team, we're kind of responsible for all of those things. So in terms of what you see, we do things like we send out swag and we do those kind of, more physical things. What you say, so we're responsible for the internal communications. So I work really closely with a lot of our executives, including our CEO, to help them create the right messages and say the right things within the company to be motivational and inspirational, but also to be really authentic, because that's a big part of our culture, is about trust and transparency and honesty.
Yeah.
So just making sure that we are really leading from the top with that. And then what you do is like how we treat each other and our actions and things like that. So my team also puts on a lot of internal events. So actually just yesterday we did our quarterly kickoff that's called Main Stage. That's a like 2.5 hour, 3 hour event. It's themed. It's super fun. We play games. We do core values awards. We also hear from our CEO. We do a Q&A with execs. And so we create these moments. And that's just one example.
It's all online.
Yeah, it's all online. Yeah.
Because I've been to company kickoffs where, 300 people come to the same place and socialize for, say, a weekend or 3 to 4 days. But you're seeing that it's possible to do online.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm also struck by a company kickoff. You mentioned, 2.5 hours to 3 hours. I guess it would be impossible to have an online event that would go for 2 days, right? For 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. So interestingly, the first time we did Main Stage, we did actually have it run over 2 days. We did like 2-3 hour sessions over 2 days, but we included things like we did like a company-wide workout. So we gave people, workout options, and we have different instructors, and they just did it in their houses and things like that.
Okay.
And we did breakout sessions and things like that. So we have done like a bigger, longer version of this thing. But we've now distilled it down into what we think are like the core components of what make a really good kickoff.
The essentials.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned that sometimes there are actual physical gatherings. How often does that happen? How is it even possible? Because I think you are all in different parts of the world. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. So my team created a program called Hopin Hangouts.
Hopin Hangouts, okay.
Which is basically anywhere in the world where there are more than, I think, 3 Hopineers, we give them budget to do something fun. And you can spend it on whatever you want, do whatever you want. But we've seen a lot of people organize really fun things from, our team in Nicaragua to our team in San Francisco to our team in London, just depending on how many people there are. So that's every quarter that budget gets refreshed. So I'm based in London, and we did one in September, and we have a holiday party coming up in December. We're one of the biggest groups, so there's I think up to 100 people could be at those events. COVID restrictions allowing, obviously.
Yes. Okay, so there's still moments where you meet face to face and you do some social gatherings. And do you think that's important?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, look, as I said at the beginning, I don't think there's any replacement for those in-person moments. I just don't think that you need to be in person every day to have. I think actually those moments are more important, more valuable when you have them less often, right?
Sure.
And the other thing that's amazing is every time that I've met coworkers since starting at Hopin, when I've met them in real life, it's like no different than seeing them online. You if you feel like you're friends with someone from hanging out with them online, then you are friends with them in real life. And I haven't found there to be any awkwardness or weirdness or anything like that. The only surprise is how tall someone is. Okay.
That's funny. Okay, another big topic of why some companies are reluctant to go 100% remote, or they want the people in the office, is accountability. Managers fear that, what will happen what if they slack off? They pretend to work. How do you work with this issue of accountability at Hopin?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I think that's a cultural thing. Our problem at Hopin is not getting people to not slack off, but actually to get them to stop working. Because the thing is, there's no distinction. My couch is right over there. There's really no distinction between where I work and where I live. And, it's great for me because I get to work whichever hours kind of suit me, and that's the really nice thing. I think if you're facing a problem with accountability and where you're finding that people are slacking off, that speaks to a larger motivation issue that you have to address. It's, that's a cultural thing that you have to kind of address at its root cause. Because like I said, for us, based on our engagement metrics, we have a highly motivated workforce. People like working here. People like working hard. And so our problem is getting them to take a break.
Okay. That's a great problem to have as a company.
Yeah.
Okay. So definitely being 100% remote is not, it's not linked to people's motivation to work. And so this is a completely separate issue. That's very interesting. Now, do you think philosophically that now that we have hybrid models or remote models, and maybe, I'm sorry if I'm going to get deep, but I'm French. I have to be a bit of a philosopher. Do you think the place of work is changing in society? The workplace being the central place where people spend time. Do you think that's what it means? Is it a bigger shift?
Yeah, I love that question, and it's something I think about a lot. Yes, I think for decades, our office has been the place and the thing around which the rest of our life oscillates, because we spend time getting there. We physically hang out more. We spend more time with these people physically than we do with our own families, which is kind of a weird thing to think about.
Yeah.
And then we spend all that time coming home, and then you have very little time left in your day to do other stuff, right? And I think it's having a remote or a hybrid model is a more human way of approaching life, because it allows you to be who you are and also do your job. Right. And, I've got lots of colleagues who have small kids, and if their kids are homesick, then they can also be home taking care of them. And, for me personally, I love traveling. And so I get to go different places, work different places, and still just be doing my same job and not be, tied to my commute to the office every day. And God, the fact that we don't have to commute anymore, I go for a walk every day, and it's amazing. I go in the morning, I listen to my podcast and get a little exercise in, and it's great. And I think that decentralized sort of view of the world that you're painting is what we're moving towards. And it's more in line with who we are as people and who we are as humans. And that's why I think companies that are trying to get people to go back into the office as a mandatory thing are going to struggle.
Okay. Now, I think we have time for one last question. So you work with other companies that organize their events. Mm-hmm. What do you see as being on the provider side as evolution or changes in company cultures?
Yeah. So you mean using internal events, using Hopin for internal events?
Yeah.
So I think it's this thing that we were talking about of an over-reliance of culture on the physical. So whether that's like having beautiful, flashy offices or having those, every week in person, all hands and things like that, shifting the culture to, okay, what is your culture when you strip all those things away, right? And so I think companies are thinking more about how we speak to each other, how we spend time together when it's not in a physical way. And Hopin, I have to say, I know I'm biased, but it's a great way of hosting those internal events because it gives you so much freedom and flexibility. We play games and we have different banners and backgrounds and things that are fun. And actually, if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see there's a behind the screens from our event yesterday.
Okay.
That shows you that it's kind of fun. But I basically think you have to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more intentional with how you are delivering those events to bolster your culture in a remote world.
Super. Thank you so much, Camilla. A lot of insights about how to keep a culture alive and how to have a great culture even when you are 100% remote. Thank you for participating. We will take a break now and we will be back at 1:15 with a super interesting conversation about publishing. And we always hear the story about digitization and publishing and how it's deeply transforming it, but there's actually a positive story there as well. How does digitization help processes in of publishing, such as printing or delivery? So we're going to talk about that at 1:15, how digitization transforms publishing. Thank you so much. We'll be right back at 1:15. Bye-bye.